Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Temko, this is the Early Access, and today we are taking a look at Children of the Galaxy. Now, Early Access is where we take a look at a game that isn't really finished, but is commercially available, either to Steam's Early Access, GOG's in development, or various different types like that. So this is not a end-all critique, but it is a look at a commercially available product that you could buy right now and play, but that should probably continue developing itself on a fairly regular basis over the coming months and years. So, Children of the Galaxy is a traditional style 4X using a hex-based grid system for the map. And before I dive any further into what the game does and doesn't do in great detail, I want to take a look at some of the things developers are already adding to the game currently and what you can expect down the line as well. So currently they say that the game is in a alpha state, and it contains most of the environments, a basic combat system, research, basic diplomacy and exploration, and when they say basic, they mean basic, and that's really it. What you will be getting down the line, according to their roadmap, is more races, a actual diplomacy and espionage system, more developed technologies, more victory conditions, a more robust AI, graphical aspects in terms of feedback visually, more animations, more of everything in regards to graphics, more audio, more tutorials, a race designer, as well as further localization. Now that's a rundown of what I plan on adding. So how much of the current game is in a good state and playable? So I won't be going into a options menu as I normally do in great detail, but I want to take a look at a few things here because generally in 4Xs, being able to customize your game experience is exceedingly important. It's important to add all these various different reports and game information the game should, at some point, inform you on. And Stellaris does a phenomenal job in this, for example, in allowing you to select the type of tutorial you want, and other games do different things, allowing you to pause the game when something happens. So what the game does is generate a report on every turn, and it allows you to say, oh, I want reports on various different things that the game does. So star systems found, unit is constructed, technology has been completed, it's gained a rank, or it has been destroyed. Overall, a fairly decent set of alerting options, though I would have preferred the game have some different ways of adding high and low probability or high and low priority alerts, where for example, a unit leveling up might not be that important. A unit being destroyed could trigger something that you're under attack, and the game doesn't really differentiate that well between them. And then the game has things like autosave and stuff like that. One last caveat here I want to add is that the game's edge panning and zooming and everything related to that is slow as all hell. It takes a lot of effort to do that. Now the game is already starting out with mod support out of the gate, and you can even mod the AI if you want to, which is fairly unique in most games. They don't generally allow you to mod the AI, so I do like that quite a bit, and the game is pretty moddable as it is. The game also has a hot seat type of multiplayer, which is strange. You generally do see local multiplayer in the games like this. You obviously see online multiplayer, either through a mail-in system, where one player takes a turn and then sends the turn to the other player over and they play asynchronously, or a multiplayer like Stellaris has, where that is real time. In this case, they have a hot seat multiplayer, which means that you switch whose turn it is based on the race. Now, I do have to say the game isn't exactly what you would call stable. I've had multitudes of crashes, game-breaking issues with map being unresponsive, actions being unresponsive, the UI becoming unresponsive. So there are some issues here definitely. It's not a complete game in any sense of the word. And the current build that is available, while polished in terms of what it offers, being complete-ish, it is not very well put together in terms of technical competence because there is some weird stuff going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dive into the game, explain a few base concepts here, and tell you whether or not the game is in a good state for launch in terms of early access and whether they are heading in the right direction in my opinion. So let's go ahead and do that. So Children of the Galaxy is played on two primary levels. First things is obviously a solar system level where you have planets that have a orbital mechanic around the star where you can colonize these planets, build objects on these planets, and then build objects in the solar system such as mining stations and defensive platforms. The other stage is the overall galactic stage where you have the entire galaxy, and there you have things like your overall empire and you can move units in warp speed between various different planets. You generally play on both these levels at any given time, and the vast majority of your units are used on both levels. So your scout vessel can scout within a solar system, finding things like anomalies, which are exceedingly rare, I must say. I would like to have them a bit more common to have some more variety in the general turn-by-turn basis, or on the galactic scale where they explore different solar systems to figure out planets, figure out resources, and figure out possible points for expansion. Things like combat units and control groups of combat units also move in that same fashion, and everything else basically either warps into hyperspeed with a cooldown and amount of turns based, and then can go in and out of different solar systems. Generally, you use these two interchangeably as you need to do things on both levels at any given time. Keep track of your opponents, keep track of planets, and everything in between. But there are a couple of issues here. Most of them are actual bugs with the game, which is a bit annoying. Sometimes the camera becomes unresponsive. Sometimes the game just doesn't want to open menus. Sometimes it will hang up and just generally crash, just giving you a weird error. And all of this appears to be linked with the extensive UI functionality. Loading up tooltips, loading up information regarding planets, loading up information regarding units, actions of various units not being displayed properly. There is a lot of little annoyances that require either you to reload a previous save file or reboot the game entirely to fix. None of them break the game and prevent you from playing on continuously completely. But there are some annoyances here regarding some of the issues with, for example, your unit being in orbit around a planet, but not allowing you to colonize it. Not because you can't colonize that planet, which is a real possibility if you don't have the research, but because the button that you press to colonize a planet just doesn't want to trigger that. It's fairly annoying when that happens, and it wastes a lot of time you otherwise wouldn't have lost. And also makes a very easy way of forgetting to set certain actions, because you think you've set them, but they haven't done anything, so something keeps waiting in the background for it to get done. A good example here is the construction queue on planets, where you, for example, want to build a scout vessel. You set that scout vessel to build, you do some other stuff, you come back a few turns later, no scout vessel. You're wondering why. Oh, it never built. Or it builds and it doesn't then trigger the alert saying a new unit has been completed production, even though you have that alert set up. So then you don't know the unit's complete, maybe you have too many things going on at the same time, and you end up forgetting about that scout unit until 20 turns down the line. Fairly annoying. But outside of these issues with the UI in terms of responsiveness, it is actually a very, very clean UI. Now this is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a very good thing because good UI design is all about clarity and providing information to the player. So things like available units to build, available cost for building, production quotas, interactive buttons that tell you where you can press and what you can press. This is all communicated fairly well, and the various overview windows for sorting and finding and doing all these things with units, they're really, really good. No complaints really here. I do have some issues though with detailed information regarding things that are going on. A good example is the mining stations that never display their actual output. You can toggle off a mining station and toggle it on again, and then in your overall output, see a fluctuation and change, and you can sort of guesstimate or calculate how much these mining stations are actually bringing in. And there's no real indicator on whether or not a mining station is doing a great job, whether or not a mining station is just a waste of space. It's just sort of there, and if it's mining, it's mining. If it's not, it's not, and you'd never get told what is going on or any information regarding that. And that is a fundamental issue with this title. The clean UI design and everything the game communicates is nearly sterile. There is no feeling, no invocation of scale, no invocation of grandeur, no expectation of magnificence. Making a destroyer in a game like Stellaris, or making a high-end unit in Civilizations, or any other game like this in terms of its ideas, always feels epic. Getting that massive unit that's going to make a difference and that signals the start of a new era or a new epoch in terms of what you're capable of always invokes a very cool strategic feeling. You've been working towards a certain achievement, whether or not be a new city, whether or not be a certain technology, whether or not that be a new unit. And this game doesn't really ever evoke that feeling. When you start up, you start colonizing planets left and right. There is no expansion and scaling of expansion. You just start colonizing. If you want to build scout units all the time, you can just pump them out at will, non-stop, no issue, because generally speaking, they don't cost a lot of resources. So by the very early game, you are already wasting a ton of resources just getting expansions out there that don't really do lots. And the same goes really for the research. Now, while the research system itself is fairly cool in terms of that you can decide how much resource energy and how much research points you want to spend on any given research. So you can say, I want to spend 20% of my research capacity on physics and another 50% on math. These two will research one by one. Only I haven't found a real benefit to doing it that way, especially not in the early to mid game, where maybe later down the line you only want to spend 20% on a very specific high-end technology that might be useful but is not high priority right now. In the early to mid game, you want to focus on getting as many technologies built out as you can, just so you can have some extra body in what you're doing. whether or not this be being able to build destroyers to defend your planets in terms of enemy fleets, or this be something like building mining facilities or defensive platforms. There are a lot of reasons to want to go specifically for specific technologies that are fairly early on the tree in one go, and not multiple technologies at the same time. So while this is in some ways a considerable balancing act in terms of what you want to focus on the other hand, it sort of defeats the purpose of balancing multiple technologies against the other at the same time, because you want to develop them all at once and by shifting the focus on them. The system does try to achieve a certain goal, but it sort of misses that goal because of the way technologies work in the game. So that's a bit of a hit and miss, and I'm not a great fan. But even then, it's all really sterile. I don't have a connection with any of the various technologies or advancements or ideas the game is trying to convey in terms of tech. And part of that is the very clean and stylized icon nature of the game. There is no real imagery here. And while I'm sure some of the imagery in the game and graphical design overall is going to improve down the line with early access, the current impression is very, very clean and sterile. Single palette, single color icons plague your screen. And even in things you might expect some color in terms of different ship design, in terms of planetary design, in terms of different buildings you can build on your planet. And while these have a different icon, it's still a flat white icon and nothing really else. Very abstract at that. So I'm not a great fan of this because it doesn't evoke any sense of connotation with your empire. I couldn't care less right now if I was playing humans or whatever else the other empires are, really, because outside of a small icon that sort of shows up when you hover over a ship unit, it doesn't really evoke anything with me. It doesn't create a feeling of aggressive warlike empires or really clean, slick, technology-oriented ones, and none of the ideas and identities of an empire are really represented well. And that is a damn shame because the game does have some very nuanced ideas behind some of the choices they've made, especially in terms of planetary expansion, empire building, as well as resource progression, because the game does have these options, but they don't really come forward that well. So to recap everything in a little bit, while this is a traditional style 4X, it is very early in its development, and the current roadmap for the developer saying 6 to 8 months is ambitious to say the very least. I believe this game needs at least 1.5 years to 2 years in the oven before it is complete and could compete with games like Stellaris or even Civilization 6, though that is slightly of a different genre. While I like the scope and idea of this game, and it does have some interesting ideas, most of it is very underdeveloped. Planetary expansion and exploitation in terms of resources, in terms of customization, in terms of unique planet types having different aspects, even though the game boasts of that, just isn't there. I can build the same couple of buildings on every planet, and you do because you have to build these extra buildings on these planets. So as soon as you colonize a planet, you just go down the list of possible buildings, select all of them, wait 20, 30, 40 turns, however much you need to get those buildings built up, and that's really it. You go back home to your core planets and start stacking up on the various destroyers, star destroyers, battleships, cruisers, whatever else you want to build, because that is really all you can do on these other planets. And you have a couple of construction units mowing around in the solar system, going by these various asteroid belts that are the only real way to get resources inside your solar system, and building a bunch of miners there that autonomously mine away. And all of this is just the same thing repeated ad infinitum. It's not that fantastic in terms of its depth in expansion. In exploration, you just press out to explore and you ignore the unit from that point forward. So overall, the game does need a lot of work left in all 4 aspects of what makes a traditional 4X a 4X. Exploration is the press of a button telling the game to go, well, you go ahead and auto-explore, I'll figure it out when you get there. And exploration really does boil down to you just pressing that button and waiting until you get an alert saying a new solar system has been discovered and you can check the planets out based on the resources they have available. The expansion aspect is building a colony ship, going to a different planet on a different solar system or even in your current solar system, going in orbit, pressing a button and just having a colony out of nowhere. Pressing 2 more buttons to queue up all the buildings in the possible colony, and then that's it. You don't really do anything else with that. There is no slow buildup of population, or at least none that has an impact. While there is a buildup of population, there is no impact in terms of living in a different living conditions. I didn't have to adapt my people to Mars as opposed to Earth, and I certainly didn't have to adapt them to go live on a gassy giant. These things are very important to make the nuanced building and development of your empire and expansion fairly good, just aren't here. It's a very shallow experience. And in a game coming into early access, that might be forgivable if it at least had some scope of what it plans to achieve in regards to this. But with a development timeline of 6 to 8 months, that just does not seem feasible in my eyes. And I'd love to be proven wrong in this regard, but as it stands, Children of the Galaxy has some very neat ideas in terms of orbital mechanics, in terms of resource gathering and collection, as well as in terms of the way research works, but all of these are very basic at every level: expansion, exploitation, exploration, but even things like diplomacy, which they have said is very limited, is nearly non-existent, and combat scaling is a very straightforward rock and paper scissors affair, where the scissors generally doesn't even need to exist because the rock is all you really need. So I do hope the developers take the time they need to further develop this game to be a deep and rich 4X, because as it stands, it's a very shallow, sterile, bland 4X experience, missing half the X's. Children of the Galaxy is coming into Steam Early Access on March 14th, and while I am highly critical of its current state, the game doesn't do a lot of things badly. Sadly, it just doesn't do a lot of things. And if you enjoy what you're seeing here, you can check the game out on Steam. And if you like this video, press that like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And leave a comment. Tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogicGaming.